Good morrow to you. Let's put some light on this subject. Whoa, that's bright. Okay. Now you can see all this. If, of course, you are looking at this on the interwebs, on either Instagram or YouTube, thank you very much for joining me. However, if you are listening to this on the audio version, then you have no idea just what just happened. I exposed my face to everyone. Welcome. Enough banter, you fool. Welcome to the SitRep for today, the situation report. It is the 20th of January 2023. We're getting there. The first month of 2023 is slowly ticking by. It's getting through it. There's a lot of stuff going on in the world at the moment. A lot of stuff for us to be concerned about. I certainly had my eye on the stock markets yesterday because I was feeling a bit shaky yesterday. I'm not going to lie. Yesterday I felt at points I was like, this is a little bit touch and go. There could be one or two factors here that could throw things into a bit of a spiral. For those who don't know, who weren't watching the stock market yesterday, it was just a down day for the Dow Jones, the big indicator from the US. But also we had some other things linked in there. Gold and silver took a hit. Crypto took a little hit for a second there. The Australian market did not take a hit. It went up for some reason. So that was one thing I was like, oh, okay, maybe this isn't as bad as I think it is. But I was reading reports from, one of the big stories coming out, the Bank of America yesterday. People couldn't get their money out. And I think this is an apt reminder for people, especially in light of just happened to talk about this, the financial collapse live that I did with that Insta-chick the other night, where we were talking about exactly this. And I sort of said, or I pointed out some things like, hey, if we're in a collapse or a collapse was to happen, there's going to be a few things that are going to start to shut down. So you're going to see a number of things close down, or you're going to get limited access to. One of them will eventually be your money, as in cash money. And I think that's the play anyway. I think that's what they're going for. The banks, or not the banks necessarily, the central banks, the governments are playing that. Let's get rid of this dollar crap stuff and go to digital currency. So your money will still be there. You just can't pull money out anymore. And as we've seen from Bank of America, that's problematic. Like when we start to look at these sorts of things, how easily people can be shut off from their own money system. And I'm not saying that Bank of America was doing what I just described. There's looks to be some sort of stuff up. But the end point is that people have cash money in the bank in ones and zeros, and they can't get it out. Bank of America basically came out and said, hey, you don't have any money. And they're like, no, I've got plenty of money. And they're like, nope, our computer says you don't have any money. In fact, you're in errors. So you're behind. You owe us money. And people are like, no, that's not true at all. And they're racking up bills, and they're racking up, fines and things from everyone else from not being able to pay these things. So that was all happening yesterday. That was an interesting thing. Really made me think. And as a result, for the past, last night and today, I've been pulling apart my preps. It's a good little reminder to get your preps ready in certain things. Financial wise, I wasn't too stressed. I was looking for a couple of other indicators, at which point I would have been like, okay, now I need to go hit the bank and do my run before everyone else does their run. Rest assured that if I am going to do that, I will be also, suggesting that you might want to do that too. So I'm not going to just go do it and then be like, hey guys, you're too late. Similar to what happened with petrol prices going through the roof last year. Just before I was looking at it, and I said, hey, I think petrol prices are about to go up through the roof, gang. I'm jumping in my car right now. I'm actually doing this in my car, heading to the petrol station. If you have the ability, I suggest you do that too. So that's the kind of thing that I'm going to be trying to do if I saw something happening. I'm not obviously saying anything's happening. But one of the good things that comes out of having a little look and going, whoa, is something bad about to happen, is it lights a little fire under me. So things like grab bags and my evacuation bags, which the evac bags I probably packed maybe it wouldn't have been 6 months ago, 3 or 4 months ago perhaps. But I always like to go through these things. I've been busy lately, like small screaming human has come into my life and just demands a lot of attention. So I kind of just put it on the back burner. Anyway, today's a good opportunity. So I've been pulling apart my preps, rebuilding grab bags, rebuilding evac bags and stuff like that. So always a good little reminder for us, I think. Certainly a good reminder for me. All right, let's jump into it. Peter Rouse on the YouTube is saying, have to play the long game with markets these days. I'd agree with that. Maybe the extreme long game. And also, like I always say this, again, I'm not a financial advisor of any way, shape or form, but diversify. Always try and diversify, your holdings, whether that be into some form of property, whether that be into cash, whether that be into bonds, whether that be into stocks, and you can separate stocks out as well, whether that be in crypto, whether that be in precious metals, gold and silver, tangible assets, that sort of stuff. I would suggest you might want to think about having some. If you are invested heavily in one, I would suggest maybe hedging your bets at this point in time. Peter Rouse also says Microsoft. I will get to that story in a sec. Funny enough, BOA glitch did not affect private banking accounts. Very funny. Yeah, there was a number. So these reports that were coming from the Bank of America weren't coming from the Bank of America. What they were coming from was individual people who had accounts with the Bank of America and were up in arms and doing the number one form of protest that you can do nowadays, getting on TikTok or getting on Instagram or whatever and complaining about it. So that's what I was talking about with the Bank of America thing. Yeah, and it didn't appear to affect any large corporations, any businesses, anything like that. So interesting that happened there. While Peter's talking, I'll just get this one out of the way. It's actually not that big of a news for me. Jacinda Ardern resigned as Prime Minister of New Zealand. Some people are, sad about that. Some people are extremely happy. I'm not a New Zealander. Doesn't really bother me. There are some things that she did in New Zealand that I definitely do not agree with. And what my interpretation of this, I'm not just saying this because this is a celebrity news or whatever. My interpretation of this is, on a long enough timeline, if somebody was to do something like these policies here, then eventually it comes out in the wash. I.e., for a number of reasons, the Australian ex-PM was shown the door when we had our elections. And one could argue that one of the driving factors behind that was the policy around that happened over the last 2 to 3 years. When you put out policies like this, when you act in this way, when you do these things against your own people, well, you end up reaping what you sow. I think Jacinda Ardern has sat down for a couple of days, and I wasn't aware of this, but Peter was actually telling me this, that she just went off media all of a sudden. It was like very, very much in the media, then disappeared. So went off media. Next time we see her come back, has had a change of heart and decided to resign as the PM. So interesting stuff there. I think she just saw the writing on the wall and had a good talking to by the rest of her party, who said, look, if we run with you next election, we're dead. We're probably dead anyway, but if we run with you, we're definitely dead. So how about you step down now, give someone else some time to get in there and hopefully boost their standing with the people and not fuck up too much to piss them off. And so that's why she's stepping down right now. But this is the comeuppance. I believe this is part of the comeuppance of what happens when you treat your own constituents, the people that you serve. You're a public servant. No, sorry. You're not a public servant. You are the number one public servant. That means if it was a hierarchy, upside down triangle of, you've got people, your constituents, the civilians, the citizens of a country, and it goes down, going up in order, the person right at the bottom there, holding that whole thing up like Atlas and being crushed by that terrible weight, should be the PM. However, we always manage to do that upside down and we treat our PM like, they're a president or a king or a queen or something. That's not the system we should have. They're a public servant. They are there to serve us. And when they don't serve us, they punish us. Well, this ends up happening. Stony Creek Stumpy says, gone at last, but who's up next? Yep. All as bad as each other, he says. So no, I don't disagree with that. Anyway, that's that. Let's talk about Ukraine. This is some pretty interesting stuff that's happening here in Ukraine in the past 48 hours. There's a lot of stuff going on. So let me just do a cap of the 2 or 3 big things, if I can remember them all, that are happening right now. NATO has called some sort of emergency meeting where all its generals and heads are coming in and meeting. So that's a pretty big deal. Like, they don't just do that at a whim. Something's going on there. So let's see what flows out of that. I don't think when they leave the meeting that they're going to go, we've talked about this. This will be days, weeks that we'll start to see stuff filter out from this, but it's a pretty big deal. So just put a pin in that, mark that, NATO, big meeting. What else have we got? The US debt ceiling is being hit as well. So I'll get onto that story very soon. But we've got some other movement within this area. So we've got the Belarusian and the Russian war games kicking off. The next 2 weeks, they said they're going to be doing all sorts of stuff. Joint Air Force drills, Army drills, all that kind of stuff going on. There's a news outlet that's been claiming that Russia is covertly transporting troops onto the front line there in Belarus, on the northern front line of Ukraine, to conceal its military buildup. So obviously they've done a military buildup, but they're saying there's much more. There's much more of a military buildup that's going on there. On top of this, Putin, Putin, I don't think actually came out and said this. I think the MINDEF did, the Minister of Defense, came out and said they're going to expand their army to 1.5 million. So we just had in the news the last week that they're increasing by 500,000. So 3 times that now. They've given it a timeline, I think out to, I don't have it here, but I think it was like 2026 or 2027, somewhere around there. So, we're looking years down the track that they're going to get another 1 million people into their military. I don't think they're going to wait on that one, to be honest. I think they're going to start ramping up very, very quickly, as they have been. This is kind of in the direction of what they've been doing anyway. The mother of all red lines is about to be crossed. This one sent to me from my main source on Instagram. US warms to helping Ukraine target Crimea. Now, this is a big deal because Crimea, for those who don't know, got taken by Russia in 2014. You could argue that this whole war that we're talking about now is just an extension of that. The war actually started in 2014, and technically kind of before that, it was a soft war before that, if you look at what the Russians did in their tactics there. But they officially took it in the Crimean Peninsula, which is a kind of island peninsula type thing that sits off the south of Ukraine. So they've taken that, and that's been Russian territory, or at least Russian-held territory, since 2014. And to be honest, the world's reaction to this was pretty lackluster. They're like, "Oh, Russia, you should not do that. Here's a couple of sanctions on you." And yeah, and Ukraine was like, this is our land. Hey guys, does anyone want to help us? And it wasn't until this latest fiasco kicked in February last year that all the world started to get more involved in it for various reasons. Anyway, the US is kind of warming to the idea and has been talking about this. The Biden administration, at least, has been talking about this, about, hey, how about we actually look at trying to get Crimea back for Ukraine? That's a pretty big deal, because in Russia's mind, this is definitely Russia. This is definitely Russia. So this is tantamount to US saying, we're going to invade Russian territory to the Russians. Okay, that's what they'd be hearing from this. So this is a pretty big escalation here that's going on there. Yeah, so they're moving into this, and they're not only, they've probably been moving into this for quite some time. The point here is that we're getting this information now. So this has now become open source information. They're letting it be known. And my policy on this. I always read these articles and go, okay, but why? Why are we knowing this now? Because in an effective and true working military intelligence cycle, civilian population should not know what they're doing until it is done. So whenever we see, oh, they're about to, I'm always like, okay, so why? Why are we finding this information out? Why are we allowed to see this? Because the smart money would be, or the smart tactic, I guess, for the US would be to feign ignorance on this and total, like, we don't want anything to do with it. We're not going to do it until you do it. Just to kind of like make sure that Russia wasn't preparing for it. But now they're giving Russia all the time in the world to prepare for it, really. Peter Rouse says Crimea voted to leave Ukraine and then later voted to join Russia. Both votes were monitored by the UN. And so this is part of the reason why the Russia believes that Crimea is part of their territory. And to a certain extent, this is why Russia is feeling in themselves legitimized to say the same thing about the Donbass region, because there were votes taken on that. Of course, that particular one is more contended nowadays. There's a lot of people who say, no, that wasn't real. That was just Russia, bulldozering over it. But yeah, it at the end of the day, it doesn't matter because that's what Russia believes. And Russia is the army that is involved in here. And Russia is the one with nuclear weapons. So what they believe is. Peter Rouse says they are under international law. Yes, like you can take that and throw that out the window, though. I think at this point, anything that goes against Russia now, all Western countries or all NATO forces or whoever it is will feel legitimized in doing it because they've said Russia has illegally invaded Ukraine. So they'll use that to legitimize it. And you can argue that, they did or they did not, all you want. But at the end of the day, like I'm saying, it doesn't necessarily matter what the punters like you and I think. It doesn't even really matter what the international law calls for. If the countries feel legitimized, they will do it. So that's what's going to happen. Also, this little tidbit came out of Moscow, which I found very interesting. They've started setting up air defense systems all around central Moscow at the moment. So in some of their more important buildings, the Ministry of Defense, there was a couple other official buildings, they started setting up these air defense systems, or not started setting up, they have set up air defense systems overnight, pretty much. It took, more than a couple of hours to do it, but they've set these up, the Pantsir S1 air defense system. So these are being deployed around Moscow at the moment. Look at what they do, not what they say. This is a classic example of that. Why? Why all of a sudden? Why at this point, when you've been at war for almost a year now, have you decided we need to protect Moscow? So what is part of their planning cycle here? Remember, Russia's not necessarily reactive in the way they do things militarily at this point in time. They have been in the past, but Russia is always, they're playing chess, not checkers here. So they're always trying to think 2-3 steps ahead. So they're thinking about a retaliatory strike against Moscow right now. For what? For what they've already done or for what they're about to do? Who knows? So we'll see what comes there. But that was a pretty big little thing that popped up there, and I was pretty interested in that. So that's kind of a little summation of what's going on in Ukraine. As I said, my little hot take on it here is that over the past 24, 48 hours, I mean, this entire situation is constantly in escalation. Sometimes that escalation is just step by step and it's very slow. And sometimes we see marked escalations. And that's what I am viewing. That's my interpretation of it, at least over the last 48 hours. I was like, whoa, here's another little step up here in this frappe. All right, let's jump over into Microsoft now, Peter. Let's have a chat about that. They're somewhere in the order of 10,000 employees. Some reports are saying more than that. They're saying up towards 12. Some are saying a little bit lower than that. But we're looking at around 10,000 employees about to be laid off from Microsoft. One of the big things I started this SitRep talking about the stock markets yesterday. One of the big things that's been hurting at the stock market recently is some of the tech sector taking tumbles. So we're seeing stuff like this. This is an indicator. This is a symptom of something bigger that's going on that a lot of people aren't really paying attention to. Tech sector is in many ways still overinflated. There are many sectors that are overinflated that you might call the kind of tulip effect, I guess. If you look at your economic crashes of the past, go look up the tulip bubble, and that might make more sense to you. But things that are valued much higher than they necessarily are actually valued at. So, for example, if I can give you two examples recently of this, one that has happened and one that probably should happen. Peloton bikes. I think they're a groovy product, by the way, but they came into this sort of bubble where people flipped out and they're like, this exercise equipment, it's so good, it's great, celebrities love it, and its value went through the roof. But it can't maintain that because the actual tangible realness of it isn't worth that much. And when people realize that, it drops off. The problem is kind of the velocity at which that drops off. If that starts dropping too quick, let's say it's valued here and its actual value is here, people realize that and they start dropping, it actually goes through that barrier and drops to below what it should be worth. And sometimes don't recover. Sometimes, companies disappear because of that. The other one I'm talking about is Tesla. I think Tesla's probably way, way overpriced for what it actually is. But all this sort of tech stuff is a big deal. Like I said, I like to watch where the money goes and what money's doing, because that's a pretty good indicator of what the richer people are looking at. And richer people are rich for a reason, usually because they get access to information that plebs like myself don't always get access to. The other thing is the employment market. The employment market in the US, I've kind of held this slightly educated guess. It's definitely a guess, but I'm looking at employment data come out, and it always perplexes me. I'm like, this doesn't seem right, or at least it seems a bit fake or hollow or pumped up somehow, and I can't quite describe it. I think there is more unemployment than we think, but when we're looking at the number of are you employed, are you not, technically people are. Unemployment, I don't think, is a great indicator of how well an economy is doing. For this example here, if times are tough and they're getting tougher, i.e. we have inflation going through the roof, cost of living is increasing. So in this theoretical world, which we're actually living in right now, if I was an individual in that world, I would be doing everything I can to earn $1. So I might take on a second job or a third job. I might scrimp and scrave. I might lower my standards in order to just get $1, which means that that employment data will look better because there's more people who are striving to get money. And so they're out there trying to get $1. But it doesn't necessarily say that these people have long-term jobs. It doesn't necessarily say that these people have good paying jobs. It doesn't necessarily say that the economy is doing well. So when you're looking at stuff like this is an isolated case too, but it's not. I don't usually talk about companies firing them, but this is one of many that I've seen over the past 3 months. 10,000 is definitely high, but this is happening everywhere. And it's not just happening in tech sector either. It's happening across the board. It is happening a lot in the tech sector, though, I will say that. Peter Rouse says, not to mention the 55,000 employees at Bed Bath & Beyond. Shadow State have better numbers on unemployed, and that's certainly, Shadow Stats. That's a website I've talked about in the past for things like inflation data, for things like CPI is a great one. and unemployment statistics as well, where it actually has a look at the factors and doesn't give you the BS version. It gives you the more realistic version. I wonder how much Microsoft CEO, I should say, is going to get as a bonus this year. Probably a lot. China's released some demographic data, and it's horrific. It's bad. I mean, it's actually much worse than I would have thought it would have been. I've been talking about this for a little while, and I kind of got there was two sources where I really started to get switched onto this. I can't remember the first one. The other one was Peter Zeihan. I remember reading his book a while ago, and started thinking about this China demographic problem. The other one, it was some other like stock or gold guru, someone who looks at shit, world movements and geopolitical situations. I can't remember who it was, but anyway, they were talking about China being in trouble with its demographics, aging population. They're going to get a decrease in population. The critical factor here is in demographics. If you don't have that sort of key 20 to 40-year-old demographic, they're the breeders in your society. If you don't have that, then you can't create more human beings to like make a bigger child curve in that demographics. They don't have it. And it's looking really, really bad for them. But they just released this data, and they've actually it was kind of like, maybe 2030, 35, 2040, they're going to see a pretty big drop off. Their population's going to start to decline. Nope, it's happening right now, which, to be fair, could have already that could have been one of the possibilities, but it just seems like it's happening a bit faster than maybe a lot of people were expecting. China's population fell last year for the first time in 6 decades. Just so you can wrap your head around this, China, when its people were being enslaved and forced into communism, because that's the only way that you could get a country into communism, by the way, is by forcing the people in that country into it. So when they were being forced into that caused a little issue called the Great Famine. And that was one of the biggest die-offs. You could call it almost a genocide, but it was a genocide against their own people that's ever occurred in recorded history. I would say the second biggest would be the Russians going to communism, and then I don't know, maybe the Holocaust after that. But these are the big die-offs, the Great Famine, okay, of the 1960s, I believe it was. Ever since they got through that, they pushed their way through. They got, Chairman Mao got the thumbs up, and they started growing food and feeding their population, sorting their shit out somehow. Their population has increased to what it is now, 1.4 billion people, and it's the largest population of any country on Earth, soon to be taken over by India, and certainly probably a lot sooner to be taken over by India if they keep dropping in population like they are. So this is the first drop in population that they've seen since the Great Famine. Pretty stark numbers coming out of there. Not really looking good for China at this point. What are the flow-on effects for this, though? These are something that you need to really think about. Is China going to go quietly into that dark night, just disappear off the face of the earth and say, well, we gave it a red hot crack. Good luck to you all. We're just going to shrink our population down to, I don't know, 200 million. And that's that. We won't have the clout that we have anymore. Good luck to the rest of you, though. US, have fun. Enjoy being on top again. I would suggest that they're not. They're not going to go quietly into that dark night. Uhtred, son of Uhtred, said, hey, bro, just a thought. If they wanted to take over or destroy a country and rebuild it, they could just turn off the monetary supply for a few months and watch the country kill themselves. Yes. Yes, they could, and might do that. Or here's another thought for you. Maybe not kill off. They'll, some will die in this scenario, but the vast majority would be under complete dependent control. If you switch the monetary system off to the point where it collapsed in, and this could be over the period of even 3 days. Remember, 9 meals. We're 9 meals away from anarchy. 3 days, the society descends into anarchy. They switch it back on to a central bank digital currency, and they say, wait, we've got enough money for everyone. Here's the money. We can pay the police now. We can pay the firefighters. We can pay our social security. We can pay the dole bludgers. Everyone gets money. Everything's great. Mummy, daddy, government are here to save you. You're welcome. And everyone goes, give it to government. Yes. Give me the CBDC. I love it. And then bang, you're all controlled. So there's another little scenario that could come from this. But either one of these, Uhtred, son of Uhtred, the way we become inoculated to this, the way we become resilient to this, is becoming more self-reliant, is becoming your own central bank by controlling your own food system as much as possible, by making sure that you secure your own water, your own shelter, your own security. If we can do this to a greater extent, then when that monetary system gets flipped off, we don't necessarily have to freak out. We can go 3 days without supermarkets being open. We can go 3 weeks. We can go 3 months. We can go 3 decades if need be. We're the ones who will not come crawling back on our knees to this government who says, now you will do as you're told. When it's quite clearly they're the ones who created the problem in the first place. Create the problem, create the solution. And everyone loves you for the solution. Except us crazy tinfoil hatters. Renee C says, oh, great, now that's out in the universe. It's happening. Carl Schwab says he will stay in office until he dies. Hopefully that's sooner rather than later. I was listening to one of his latest talks on WF and in the Davos, sorry, and I can't not see a Bond villain. The look, the sound of his voice, everything about him. Another explosion hits Baltic gas pipeline. I haven't been talking about these a lot, but I have been tracking them. There is, I would say every 2 to 3 days, there is another story about a gas pipeline exploding, or a gas facility exploding into flames in and around Russia, especially the western edge of Russia, and in the Baltic states as well. It's just something to keep your eye on. Obviously, there was the big Nord Stream, pipeline explosion. Which, how much have you heard of that lately? When they came out and said this definitely wasn't Russia. You know who it probably was? It was. Here's a new series of this TV show. Everything's changed now. Everything's different. Everything's cool. Look what Biden's doing now. Oh my God, left some top secret stuff in his garage. Oh, forget about that. Putin. Look at Putin. Yeah, very interesting that went out of the news cycle very quickly when they realized that it wasn't. Wait, Russia didn't blow up their own pipeline? Oh, never saw that coming. But there is still all these explosions that are going on. A lot of the explosions, by the way, I'm seeing this stuff on the Russian side of reporting, Russian propaganda, Russian news sources. Don't see much of it at all from Western sources. So it's an interesting one. They never state though that it was an attack. Or very, very rarely. There's 1 or 2 where I've seen that it was an attack, but they usually say it was just a gas explosion. I'm like, you guys need to work on your infrastructure because there is a lot of gas explosions. Speaking of Russia, how's their economy doing? It beat expectations. So this story is coming out of the Washington Post. Love it or hate it. That's very left-leaning publication. And I want to read the headline to you. Putin says Russia's economy beat expectations. Did sanctions fail? Question mark. The thickness of these so-called reporters just astounds me. Every day they put something like this out, and I'm just like, are you an idiot? Clearly, these sanctions haven't been working. Clearly, they've been working from the start, and it's now almost 12 months into it that we're going, oh, did these fail? Actually, we're getting a lot of data coming out of Russia, and they seem to be doing all right and making more connections with other countries. Maybe the sanctions aren't working. The other thing I'm reading in this story is the propaganda war against us, against the West, against the individual people, the sheeple, the NPCs out there, starting to sow seeds. That, this is my tinfoil hat conspiracy, by the way. Starting to sow seeds like, hey, we tried sanctioning, guys, and it's not working. We might have to do more. We might have to go into Ukraine and fight the good fight there. Because if Ukraine fails, we're all going to die. FYI, I think that if Russia fails, we might all die. I think that, sounds bad. I think we should really be suing for peace at this point, because I can't see good things happening if Russia gets beaten back and destroyed. I just really can't at this point. But anyway, maybe that's happening. Maybe they are laying the groundwork to soften the public view of increased actual war fighting from Western countries in Ukraine. This was a horrific story that got sent to me by my main source. It's about eggs. So these are two food-based ones. It's about eggs. So this was Bloomberg. Apparently they took it down, but my main source went and dug it up in the archives, because everything you put on the internet's always there. You can find stuff. So it's an archived version of this article. There's never been a better time to try plant-based eggs. Let's repeat that. Plant-based eggs. As the US price tag of plant-based eggs fell below that of chicken eggs at the end of last year. I don't know why they insist, why vegans and such what insist on naming things that are non-vegan. Like, not bacon. What do you call it? Faux bacon, or, fake bacon. I don't know. Faux duck. Fuck. They're always likening it to something like, hey, I've made this soy thing and it's just like chicken. Oh, we've got these plant-based sausages. We've got these plant-based burgers and plant-based eggs. For fuck's sake. It's like, just come up with some other name of it. Just call it your own thing. This is our shit. Why do you need to be tricked into eating this stuff? Just eat the eggs, eat actual chicken eggs, or don't. Go eat plants. Eat a fucking burger, or don't. Go eat plants. Go eat bugs. I don't care. All right? I just don't know why they insist on that. Anyway, that's a side rant. Yeah, this is more of the vegan propaganda, or the attack on nutritious food, as I'm starting to conceptualize it now. All this sort of stuff is an attack on human beings getting the optimal nutrition into their bodies so that they can be a fully functioning human being. And part of being a fully functioning human being is actually being a weapon, or a survival weapon, a survival tool maybe might be the better way to put it, but that's the way I think of it. That's my slant on it. That's the way I conceptualize it, is that human beings are also weapons. They're weapons built around survival. We can do things. Take away those things, the nutrients, the supply of food that we've used for hundreds of thousands of years in order to enact that survival skill. And what do you got? You got dependent human beings. So this is yet another attack on human nutrition. Yeah. I'll pay more for a chicken egg. I don't care. I'm not going to skimp out and buy a plant-based egg. I haven't got anything against plants, by the way. I eat plants. I grow plants. They're delicious. I also eat meat and eggs and cheese, and milk. Yeah, you make up your own mind. Taking of eggs in the process of doubling the size of our chicken coop to fit 40 chickens very comfortably, plus the peafowl. This is from Peter Rouse in New Zealand. He's doing some great stuff, prepping stuff. I love it. Keep it up. 40 chickens is great. That is awesome. All right, enough about eggs. Let's talk about something more serious, coffee. Quote, limiting your contribution to climate change. All right, let me start again. Quote, limiting your contribution to climate change requires an adapted diet, and coffee is no exception. Choosing a mode of coffee preparation that emits less GHGs and moderating your consumption are part of the solution. Cool. All right, I've talked about the lines, the hills that I will die on before. I think the first one I ever really talked about was dogs, people taking pets away. It was like, if you own a pet, then you own a dog. You're a climate change hater. You hate the climate. You're destroying the world. And I was like, fuck you. Come take my dogs. That's my line. That's my hill that I'll die on. Second one, coffee. Not taking it away from me. But in all seriousness, though, the increase in temperature that we may or may not be seeing in the world at the moment can be affecting the supply of coffee. But this is something that I'm really going to strive to secure in my supply. I've got a lot of, fortunately or unfortunately, you can store freeze-dried coffees and instant coffee ad infinitum, like forever, as far as I know. You can have as much as you want for as long as you want. As long as you keep it dry, it doesn't go off. All right? It's there, and it's there forever. Unfortunately, instant coffee is like ass. I'm sorry if you're one of those people who likes to eat ass, but I do not. It tastes like shit, literally. So, that's something. I do store it up. I do have that as part of my long-term prep. But, man, I love a freshly ground brew of coffee. Don't take this away from me, guys. Do not do it. I don't want to go John Wick on the world. What about the elite's consumption of everything, says SpyScale27. This is, a really good question to ask. Everyone's all up in arms like, we got to do this, we got to do this. I'm like, well, is it everyone has to do this? Because I can see these guys just flew in to talk about the World Economic Forum on apparently 1,000 separate private jets with unvaccinated pilots. So rules for thee and rules for me. Very different. Renee C says, if you whip instant coffee, it takes away the crappiness. Go on, instant coffee. Get better. Need to figure out a way to grow our own coffee beans. Yes. I have actually looked into this. It takes a certain climate and also takes elevation. Elevation, maybe. It's not very elevated here in Australia. But I am relatively high in Australia, as in elevation. I'm not high, not most of the time anyway. All right, last thing that I've got here. America has reached its debt limit. So I was talking about this the other day. Well, it's happened. We're at it. We're at the debt limit. There is a plan. I was reading their little plan that they've got, that they're going to pay just the absolute minimum. So the people that they must pay, there's a few plans in place to do that. But this is kind of a concerning thing. I mean, slightly concerning. My take on it is I think they'll just kick the can down the street again. Why not? Why not? If you're at 30 trillion, why not make it 40? Why not make it 60? While we're at it. Hell, why not make it 100 trillion? New debt limit is 100 trillion. It's imaginary money. At the end of the day, it doesn't really matter apart from confidence. The whole thing's a confidence game. It's a con. It's a scam. But as long as you keep playing it, the Ponzi scheme continues. So I think US Congress will get to that point where they'll sign off on this. And once, and things will continue as normal. And they'll continue to rack up debt, but they're getting to some pretty frightening levels at the moment. So that's interesting. Anyway, I'll keep my eye on that, see what happens, see what comes of it. Potentially could be bad. Potentially this is a civilization collapsing event, but like I said, I don't think they will allow it. They've got too much on the line for it to go there. Peter Rouse says, we have the elevation here, but not the climate, talking about New Zealand. Grow tunnels and heaters. That's what I'm thinking, right? Grow tunnels, heaters, like polytunnels, elevation. Once we've got the elevation, I was actually thinking about, can we create artificial elevation? Something to think about. I'm talking about coffee, by the way, in case people don't know. Uhtred, son of Uhtred, says, I have been off coffee for 8 weeks. Oh, I'm sorry to hear that, man. Now, after learning about Stephen Tiniski's book, Caffeine Blues. Yeah, well, caffeine has positives, it has negatives. And I think actually one of the things that I see about caffeine, for people who are caffeine haters, because I used to get this like when I was more of a hippie, hang around hippies, though some hippies just fucking hate coffee. You just got this hate on for coffee, just want it out of the world. Like, oh, I feel much better now that I don't do coffee, and coffee does this for you and coffee does that. I'm like, coffee does that for you. I met somebody who got drunk off kombucha. I met somebody who, if they even drank a sip of coffee, would be awake for 3 days. Coffee, like every other substance on the face of the planet, affects everyone differently, totally differently. But definitely, there are, like, I've got to admit, there are negative effects of coffee, but there are some damn good effects as well. And I love it. So I ain't giving it up. That's all there is to it. I might have to give it up one day, I guess, but Peter Rouse says it improves brain function and decreases Alzheimer risk. So there's something. That is something. All right, that's it for today, gang. I hope you're all doing well, as always. I'm going to go out and do some yard work now, and then I'm going to finish off packing some grab bags and stuff. So, yeah, if you got time, work on your preps today. How's that sound? Yes, continue prepping, continue doing the good stuff. Like I always say, I think we're slowly sort of creeping towards a time period that will be a bit harder than the one that we've experienced in the last 30, 40 years. But if we're prepared, we can ride over some of those bumpy times in a smoother way. But I hope you're all healthy and happy, and growing some food as well. As always, if you've got any questions, please fire them through to me. Thank you to everyone who sent some stories and stuff like that through to me that you guys are finding interesting. I also find them interesting, so please continue to do so. And until next time, Semper Paratus.